My name is Alice. I'm sitting in my hospital bed, looking at the stack of papers on the tray table beside me. These papers have rewritten my life, cutting ties with the family who once took me for granted and embracing those who truly stood by me. It all started when I found myself in the ICU, fighting for my life while my family was busy with other things. I own a successful home care business in Seattle. It's a company that provides care for the elderly and the sick in their homes. I've built it from the ground up, starting with just a single client and an old car. I've always been the reliable one in my family, the strong pillar that everyone leans on. A few weeks before my hospitalization, I started feeling unwell. I was short of breath climbing the stairs at the office, and there was a dull ache in my right calf. I attributed it to long work hours and stress, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. I went to see my doctor, and he ordered some tests, warning me to watch out for chest pain and breathing difficulties. But I was so caught up in my work that I didn't take it seriously. I was the strong one, after all, and strong people don't have time to be sick. My family has always seen me as the rock. My mother, Linda, is a very self-centered woman. She's always been more concerned about my younger sister, Lily, and her children. My father, Tom, is a quiet man, but he's always followed my mother's lead. Lily is married to Jake, and they've been trying to buy a new house. I've been helping them financially, paying for my parents' retirement home and even agreeing to put up the down payment for Lily's new place. It was a Tuesday morning at the office when everything went wrong. I was standing in front of the scheduling board, trying to arrange care for a weekend client, when suddenly, I felt like the world was spinning. It wasn't just dizziness, it was as if the air had turned to concrete, and I couldn't breathe. A sharp pain shot through my chest, and I dropped my coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but the sound seemed so far away. My office manager, Sarah, a no-nonsense woman who's been with me since the early days, saw my face and immediately dialed 911. I remember the cold floor against my cheek, Sarah's calm voice giving my details to the dispatcher, and the terror of not being able to speak. The paramedics arrived quickly, and they loaded me into the ambulance. As the siren wailed and I struggled to get enough air, I had a clear thought: I might die today. In the emergency room, things moved at a frantic pace. Scans, IVs, and doctors talking in hushed tones above my head. Finally, a doctor with a serious face came to my bedside and told me the truth. I had a pulmonary embolism, a large blood clot that had traveled from my leg to my lung. It was life-threatening, and the next couple of days were critical. He advised me to contact my family. I reached for my phone on the tray table. My hands were shaking, but I told myself that my family would come running. I called my mother first. Her phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a short message, telling her I was in the ICU and that it was serious. I waited for 10 minutes and then called my father. The same thing happened. I knew it was a busy day for them. Lily was moving into her new house, and my parents had promised to help. But I couldn't believe that they would ignore my calls. Over the next 2 hours, I called them 5 more times, but every single call went unanswered. Then, out of desperation, I opened the family group chat. There were pictures of Lily's new living room, boxes stacked to the ceiling, and my father grinning as he held one end of a couch. My mother had posted a message saying, "Best day. So proud of our girl and her beautiful new home." I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. I realized that in their eyes, I was nothing compared to Lily's move. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. For a moment, my heart leaped, thinking it was my mother. But it was a text from Lily. It said, "OMG, busy with the move today, but glad you're being looked after. Rest up. Talk soon." I read it 3 times, waiting for a follow-up message asking how I was, but it never came. I felt completely alone. But then, I remembered my younger brother, Ben. He's 28, a college professor, and he's always been a bit of an outsider in our family. I almost didn't call him, afraid of scaring him. But I was so tired and scared that I pressed his name on my phone. He picked up on the second ring. When I told him I was in the hospital, he didn't ask any questions. He just said, "Which hospital?" "I'm coming right now." 40 minutes later, he walked into my room, still in his work clothes, his face pale with worry. He took my hand and said, "I'm here. I've got you." I started to cry. For the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to have someone truly care about me. Ben stayed with me. He called his college and arranged for a substitute. He slept in the uncomfortable chair by my bed and woke up every time the nurses came to check on me. By the second day, the medication was working, and my condition was improving. But I couldn't stop thinking about my family. I thought about the money I'd been spending on my parents' retirement home, the life insurance policy with their names on it, and the down payment for Lily's house. I realized that I'd been pouring my life into people who didn't care about me. The next morning, I woke up to my phone lighting up with the family group chat. My mother had posted a picture of Lily's new kitchen, all unpacked, and a message about how wonderful the weekend had been. Not a single word about me. I felt a strange sense of calm. I knew it was time to make a change. I called my lawyer, Mark. He's been my legal advisor since I started my business. I told him what had happened and what I wanted to do. I wanted to change my beneficiaries, rewrite my will, stop the automatic payments to my parents' retirement home, and withdraw the down payment for Lily's house. Mark was concerned. He asked if I was sure this was a decision and not just a reaction to my situation. I told him that I'd spent my whole life giving my family the benefit of the doubt, but the last 2 days had shown me the truth. He said he'd come to the hospital within the hour and asked me to make sure my doctor was available. Before Mark arrived, I spoke to my doctor. I explained what I was planning to do and asked if she could confirm that I was in a clear state of mind and capable of making these decisions. She looked at me for a long time and then said yes. She said my labs were stable, my oxygen levels were good, and I was fully aware of what I was doing. My night nurse, Lisa, agreed to be the second witness. I'd seen her take care of the patients on the unit with such professionalism and kindness, and I trusted her. When Mark arrived, he laid out the papers on the tray table. One by one, he walked me through them. The first was the change of beneficiary on my life insurance policy. My parents' names were removed, and in their place were Ben and a charity fund for caregivers that I'd always wanted to start. The second was the new will, redirecting my estate in the same way. The third was the order to stop the automatic payments to my parents' retirement home, and the fourth was the formal withdrawal of the down payment for Lily's house. I read each page carefully, understood what I was signing, and then put my signature on them. There were no tears, no drama. It was just the quiet scratch of a pen, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. A few days later, the consequences started to unfold. Jake called Ben, panicked because the bank was saying the down payment hadn't come through. The closing was in jeopardy, and the sellers were threatening to walk. Ben put the call on speaker, and I listened as Jake rambled on about how I'd always been reliable. He still didn't seem to understand that my well-being was more important than the house. That evening, Lily called me. I thought, for a moment, that she was finally going to apologize and ask how I was. But all she said was, "Is there a problem with the down payment? Jake is freaking out, and we might lose the house." I felt a final thread snap inside me. I said, "Lily, I called our parents 9 times from the ICU. You sent me a text telling me to rest up." She was confused and asked what that had to do with the house. It was then that I realized she truly didn't see the connection. My mother started calling me non-stop after that. But I didn't pick up. I knew that if I talked to her on the phone, she'd find a way to turn the situation around and make me the bad guy. I wanted to have this conversation in person, in front of witnesses. I spent the night getting ready. I asked Mark to bring copies of all the documents so that there would be no room for doubt. He also gave me some advice: don't argue. Just state the facts and let the papers speak for themselves. The next morning, my family came to my hospital room. My mother walked in first, carrying a bouquet of flowers and wearing a big smile. She kissed my forehead and said, "Oh, you gave us such a scare, but you're the strong one. I knew you'd be okay." Then she immediately started talking about the problem with the house money. I didn't raise my voice. I gently moved the flowers aside and nodded to Mark. He stepped forward and laid the papers on the tray table. I told them quietly what I had done. I explained that when I was in the ICU, alone and fighting for my life, they didn't even bother to answer my calls. So, I'd decided to change my life. My mother's smile froze. She started to yell, saying I was being cruel and that it was all a misunderstanding. She said the messages got lost, and I should have made it clearer. But Mark calmly explained that everything I'd signed was legal and valid, and there was no way to contest it. Lily finally understood what had happened. She looked at me with fear in her eyes and whispered, "You're taking my house." I said, "I'm not taking anything. I'm just not paying for it anymore." My father sat in the corner, his head in his hands. He finally spoke up and said that he was sorry. He told me that he'd made a mistake by listening to my mother and ignoring my calls. Before they left, I told my parents that I was willing to consider helping them with their monthly care at the retirement home, but only if they acknowledged that they'd left me alone when I needed them the most. And from then on, our family relationship had to be a two-way street. My father signed the agreement right away, his hand shaking. My mother took a long time, but in the end, she said, "I should have come." It wasn't much, but it was a start. In the end, I realized that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're at your lowest. Ben has been by my side throughout this whole ordeal, and I know I can always count on him. And I'm starting to rebuild my life, focusing on the people who truly matter.